fact is, we have far more sources for Jesus of Nazareth than we do for many historical figures in the first century as well. We have at least 18. 12 of those are non-Christian sources.
Everything you think you know about the resurrection is incomplete. For nearly 2,000 years, the world was told the story ended at an empty tomb. We were taught that the final words were already written, sealed, and beyond question. But what if the last chapters were never missing by accident? What if they were removed on purpose? Far from Rome, far from Western councils, Ethiopian monks protected a different record. Not fragments, not myths. Full passages, written, guarded, and now translated. While the Western Bible closed its canon, Ethiopia kept reading. While others trimmed the text to fit doctrine, they preserved what did not fit. The result is a resurrection account that does not comfort institutions. It challenges them. This is not about adding footnotes to scripture. This is about a version of events that rewrites what resurrection meant, what Jesus did after death, and why that knowledge was never meant to spread. The Western world inherited a safe ending. Ethiopia kept a dangerous middle. These translations do not expand the story. They expose it. They suggest the resurrection was not a quiet victory, but a turning point hidden in plain sight. And now, after centuries of silence, those words are surfacing at the exact moment. People are questioning everything they were taught. Stay with us. What these passages reveal changes the foundation of the story itself. The Bible that was never shortened. Most people grow up believing there is only one Bible, one fixed book that has always existed in the same form. It is taught as complete, settled, and final, but history quietly tells a different story. Long before modern churches agreed on what should be included and what should be left out, early Christian communities used many texts, letters, and teachings. Some were debated, some were valued deeply, and some slowly disappeared from common use. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church followed a very different path. Instead of narrowing its scriptures over time, it preserved a much wider collection.
Ethiopia's Orthodox Tewahedo Church is one of the largest and oldest in Africa. But a split within its ranks last month led to weeks of unrest, divisions, and restrictions for social media users.
Their biblical canon contains 81 books. That is 15 more than the Protestant Bible and 8 more than the Catholic version. These extra books are not recent inventions, and they are not fringe writings created in the Middle Ages. Many of them were already known to early Christians during the first centuries after Jesus' life, long before church councils began deciding what counted as official scripture and what did not. While Western churches slowly reduced their canon, often for the sake of clarity, unity, or control, Ethiopian monks did the opposite. They copied everything carefully, patiently, by hand. Generation after generation of scribes passed these texts down, even when the outside world barely knew they existed. They worked through invasions, civil wars, droughts, and long periods of isolation from Europe and the Middle East. In stone monasteries and mountain churches, these manuscripts were treated not as optional readings, but as sacred memory. These books were written in Ge'ez, an ancient language that is no longer spoken in daily life but is still used in Ethiopian worship today. Because Ge'ez remained sacred and protected, the text did not pass through the same layers of translation and revision that Western manuscripts did. They were not constantly updated to match new political powers or church structures. Instead, they stayed close to their early forms, preserving ideas that later generations might find difficult, confusing, or even dangerous. For a long time, Western scholars dismissed these Ethiopian texts as legends or local traditions. Many assumed they were copied too late to matter, but science eventually challenged that assumption. Radiocarbon dating changed the conversation completely. Manuscripts, such as the Garima Gospels, discovered in Ethiopian monasteries, were dated between the 4th and 7th centuries. That makes them some of the oldest surviving Christian manuscripts on Earth. In some cases, they are older than European copies that heavily influence Western theology and belief. This matters more than it might seem at first. When a story survives without being shortened, it keeps its sharp corners. It keeps ideas that do not fit neatly into sermons or simple lessons. It keeps questions instead of easy answers. And it preserves moments that later editors may have preferred to smooth over or quietly ignore. The Ethiopian canon does exactly that. It holds on to material that challenges how people understand God, authority, and the human soul. One of the most important differences appears in how the resurrection is treated. In many Western Bibles, the resurrection is described briefly. Jesus rises, appears a few times, and then ascends. The focus quickly shifts to heaven, salvation, and the birth of the church. But in the Ethiopian tradition, the resurrection is not treated as a short ending, it is treated as a continuation. A turning point that unfolds over time, not a single moment that closes the story. According to these preserved texts, the days following the resurrection matter deeply. They are not space, they are not silent days, they are filled with teaching, preparation, and warnings. This period is where questions about life, death, and spiritual authority are addressed most directly. And yet, in most modern Bibles, this space is barely mentioned at all. That gap is exactly where the newly translated Ethiopian passages focus. They return attention to the days most people never learned about, days that were not erased in Ethiopia, only hidden from the wider world. As these texts are translated and studied today, they do not add anything new. They restore something old, something that was never shortened, never trimmed, and never softened to fit a simpler story. And that is why these translations are causing such deep reactions. They suggest that the resurrection was not just an ending, it was a beginning that continued on earth, shaping ideas that many believers were never meant to see. What the resurrection actually looked like. In most Western readings of the Bible, the story of Jesus' resurrection is short, simple, and comforting. Jesus appears briefly to his followers, offers a few words of peace, and then ascends, leaving behind a sense of hope and closure. It is easy to imagine a quiet, gentle moment. A moment meant to reassure, to comfort those who mourned, and to leave humanity with faith in a distant, untouchable God. But the Ethiopian resurrection texts, now being translated after centuries of secrecy, tell a profoundly different story, one that is far more complex, urgent, and transformative than anything Western Christianity has emphasized. According to these ancient writings, Jesus did not vanish shortly after appearing to his disciples. He remained with them for 40 days, an entire period, during which he was fully present, fully engaged, and entirely focused on preparing his followers for what lay ahead. He did not stay silent. He did not hide. Every day was filled with instruction, with guidance, with warnings about forces that ordinary humans could not see, yet which influenced every choice, every action, and every thought. The focus was not on monuments of stone, on buildings of worship, or on rituals that merely repeated words. The focus was on the survival of the human soul, on equipping ordinary people with the knowledge, awareness, and inner strength to navigate a world divided between truth and deception. These texts describe a universe where the divisions are not geographical or political. There are no armies to fight, no nations to conquer. Instead, Jesus spoke of invisible systems, forces that manipulate human behavior in ways that are subtle yet powerful. He explained that the real struggle is not against other people, but against deception, lies, and the seduction of power. The followers he taught were not being instructed to build structures of worship or to accumulate wealth. On the contrary, he warned them against trusting stone or gold, against placing faith in institutions that would eventually distort his teachings. Power, he said, could take on a holy appearance. Authority would don religious clothing while exploiting the faith of the people. The simplicity of prayer and devotion, if guided only by an external system, could become a tool for control rather than liberation. This version of the resurrection flips the familiar narrative on its head. It removes the comforting idea of Jesus as a distant figure offering fleeting reassurance and replaces it with a call to responsibility. Faith is not a passive inheritance, it is an active duty. The texts make it clear that belief is not meant to be entrusted to intermediaries, no matter how holy or authoritative they appear. Instead, it is to be nurtured, protected, and exercised within the human heart. Each follower was tasked with understanding the subtleties of spiritual truth, recognizing deception, and maintaining awareness of the invisible forces that shape not only individual choices but also entire communities. This was not a faith for the easily swayed, nor a doctrine for blind obedience. It was a faith that demanded courage, discernment, and a readiness to confront uncomfortable realities. Perhaps this is why the Ethiopian resurrection text remained hidden for so long. A resurrection that empowers individuals, that gives knowledge and responsibility directly to ordinary people, is inherently disruptive. Systems built on obedience, hierarchy, and centralized authority cannot tolerate such a paradigm. It challenges the foundations of power, undermines control, and opens the door for people to experience a direct, unmediated connection with the divine. The Western canon, by contrast, emphasizes a shorter, simpler narrative, one that comforts but limits understanding. The texts that survived in Ethiopia preserved the rough edges, the lessons, the warnings, and the knowledge that could change the way humanity understands life, death, and faith itself. The Ethiopian account also highlights the practical, almost strategic nature of Jesus' teachings. Each day of the 40 days had a purpose. His instructions were designed to prepare his disciples not just for immediate challenges, but for the long-term survival of their spiritual integrity. He spoke of discernment, of noticing subtle manipulations in the world, and of recognizing when faith was being used as a tool by those in power. These lessons were not abstract. They were grounded in observable behaviors and tangible decisions, meant to equip ordinary humans to navigate extraordinary spiritual realities. By giving his followers this knowledge, Jesus was essentially creating a system of resilience and inner armor that no external authority could strip away. The intensity of these 40 days stands in sharp contrast to the peaceful, almost ceremonial resurrection familiar to most readers of the Western Bible. It shows a Jesus deeply concerned with human agency, a teacher more interested in empowering his followers than in leaving behind monuments or dogma. Faith, in this context, becomes a living, breathing practice of awareness, responsibility, and courage. It is personal, direct, and transformative. The resurrection is no longer a simple story of hope and ascension. It becomes a blueprint for understanding the forces that shape the soul, a guide to preserving inner truth against deception, and a call to embrace responsibility for one's own spiritual survival. The two winds. Inside every human, one of the most unsettling and thought-provoking teachings found in the newly translated Ethiopian resurrection passages is the concept of two winds within every human being. This is not a metaphor in the casual sense, nor is it merely poetic language. According to the text, every person carries within them a dual force, one wind that gives life, vitality, and clarity, and another wind that spreads error, corruption, and spiritual decay. The first wind fuels the soul, allowing a person to act with wisdom, compassion, and understanding. It is the source of insight, moral awareness, and inner harmony. The second wind, however, is far more insidious. It is not described in terms of simple wrongdoing, temptation, or fleeting bad habits. Instead, it behaves like an infection, creeping silently into the heart and mind through greed, unguarded speech, and the relentless pursuit of desires that serve the ego rather than the soul. What makes this teaching so striking is the imagery it evokes. The text introduces a phrase that stops the reader cold: the walking tomb. This is not a casual metaphor or an exaggeration. A walking tomb is someone who continues to breathe, work, and speak but has lost inner awareness. The body remains alive, functional, and outwardly normal, yet the spirit is dead. All vitality, all connection to the life-giving wind has been choked out over time by the relentless influence of the wind of error. People can go through entire lifetimes in this state, appearing successful, respected, or even devout. Yet, spiritually, they have become empty shells, disconnected from the truths that sustain human consciousness. What is even more remarkable about this teaching is that it does not prescribe the usual solutions offered by organized religion. There are no rituals, offerings, or ceremonies that can cleanse the heart from this corruption. Instead, the path to protection and restoration is knowledge and awareness cultivated through careful attention to one's own thoughts, actions, and words. The text encourages individuals to watch their minds as a gatekeeper would guard a city. It teaches the practice of silence, the cultivation of mindfulness, and the careful observation of impulses before they take root. Inner discipline, rather than obedience to external authority, becomes the path to the survival of the soul. The implication is clear. Spiritual empowerment is not granted by leaders, priests, or institutions. It is cultivated within the individual, and this makes each person fully responsible for their own moral and spiritual state. It is perhaps no coincidence that such ideas were suppressed or ignored in much of Western history. Civilizations and empires built on obedience, hierarchy, and control found little use for teachings that placed power and knowledge inside the hearts of ordinary people. A society where individuals understood the two winds and guarded against the walking tomb could not be easily dominated or manipulated. In other words, this was a dangerous form of spiritual independence, one that undermined systems reliant on passive faith and unquestioned authority. The Ethiopian resurrection passages, therefore, transform the event of the resurrection itself. What Western narratives present as a brief moment of hope and divine reassurance becomes, in these texts, a call to action, a guide to cultivating inner vigilance and a framework for surviving spiritual corruption. The resurrection is no longer solely about life after death. It is about learning to live consciously, to nurture the life-giving wind, and to resist the creeping force of error. It turns a story of faith into a practical, deeply personal discipline that challenges every human to confront their own inner duality. By presenting the wind of life and the wind of error as tangible forces within each person, the Ethiopian texts empower readers to see themselves as active participants in their own spiritual journey. This teaching elevates consciousness itself into a sacred responsibility, redefining the nature of faith, moral duty, and personal empowerment. It is a resurrection not just of the body, but of the mind and spirit, a call to awaken to the forces that truly govern the human soul. Why do these words sound uncomfortable today? Some of the most striking aspects of the Ethiopian resurrection text become clear when you notice how they align with modern scientific discoveries, something that no one could have expected when these manuscripts were first written. For instance, the text described vast hidden waters beneath the earth. At the time, such a statement might have sounded like myth or imagination, but today, geologists have discovered enormous water reserves trapped deep within the Earth's mantle. This is water that exists far below the surface, unseen, untouched, and incredibly difficult to study. When ancient religious texts accurately describe something that modern science only confirms centuries later, it forces us to reconsider what knowledge these early authors might have had. Similarly, the manuscripts speak of winds moving through specific gates across the sky. Today, meteorologists map global wind patterns and jet streams that circle the planet in invisible highways. The idea that these ancient scribes could describe such forces in such precise terms raises questions about the level of observation and understanding available to them. It's not just knowledge of the physical world, it hints at a deep awareness of the systems that govern life itself. When you read these texts, you begin to notice another layer. Their warnings are not about faith or belief in the usual sense. They are warnings against complacency, against accepting appearances at face value. They speak of deception that looks holy, of authority that wears the guise of truth, and of a future where images and rituals replace real understanding. They describe a world where truth is so mixed with lies that people stop questioning anything. Look around today, and those words feel uncomfortably close. Social media, curated news, influencers, and institutions all feed narratives where seeing often replaces thinking, and knowing is reduced to believing what someone else tells you. These warnings are uncomfortable because they demand effort. They require mindfulness, observation, and personal responsibility. They don't offer comfort or reassurance. They don't hand out easy answers or magical solutions. Instead, they challenge each reader to wake up, to see deception, and to cultivate understanding. And that is precisely why these texts were hidden or ignored for so long. Comfort always sells better than responsibility. It has throughout human history. People prefer to be reassured rather than confronted with the responsibility to think, question, and act. The Ethiopian resurrection passages, then, are more than historical curiosities. They are a call to vigilance, to personal awareness, and to understanding the world and ourselves in ways that few modern teachings dare to challenge. Why these translations are appearing now? For countless centuries, the Ethiopian resurrection manuscripts remained hidden, locked away in remote monasteries perched on mountains and tucked into valleys. These texts were not just stored for preservation, they were fiercely guarded. Monks devoted their lives to protecting them, believing the world outside was not ready to handle their truths. They understood that what was written in these pages went far beyond comforting stories or rituals. The knowledge contained there had the power to challenge entire belief systems, to shift the focus from obedience to personal responsibility, and to force readers to confront the unseen forces that govern both the physical and spiritual worlds. Today, however, these texts are starting to emerge. Translations are appearing online, slowly, quietly, often outside the control of traditional institutions. They are not being formally released by churches or academic authorities, but through independent channels, shared by those who believe the information is too important to remain hidden. The question naturally arises, why now after so many centuries of secrecy? Some scholars and observers suggest that timing plays a role. The world is experiencing a global loss of trust in institutions, governments, religious organizations, and authorities that once held unquestioned power. Millions of people are seeking direct understanding, personal insight, and truth that cannot be mediated by hierarchical structures. Others believed amongst themselves recognize a growing confusion, a spiritual disorientation spreading across societies, and chose transparency over continued silence. They may have decided that humanity had reached a moment where it could begin to grasp, even partially, the lessons these ancient passages contain. Whatever the exact reason, the emergence of these translations forces a question that many have avoided for centuries. Was the resurrection meant simply to affirm belief, or was it designed to awaken responsibility? In the Ethiopian tradition, the resurrection was never a moment of closure or comfort. It was an ongoing process, a set of instructions left behind for humanity before something darker arrived. It was a call to vigilance, to inner awareness, and to understanding the dual forces within every person that could either sustain life or destroy the spirit. This shift in perspective reframes everything we thought we knew about the resurrection. It moves the story from passive faith to active engagement, from quiet reassurance to the urgent task of guarding one's own heart and mind. The translations appearing today are not just historical artifacts, they are a challenge. They are an invitation to see beyond what has been handed down and to confront truths that were once considered too dangerous to reveal. The resurrection story most people know is neat and contained. It fits inside sermons and songs. It comforts without challenging. The Ethiopian resurrection passages do the opposite. They disturb, they warn, they place responsibility back into human hands. If these translations are authentic, then the resurrection was not an ending. It was a briefing, a moment where humanity was told the rules had changed and attention was now required. These monks did not preserve these texts for fame or attention. They preserved them because they believed truth should survive power, even if it made people uncomfortable. The question now is not whether these texts are real. The question is what happens when people read them without filters. Do they return to comfort, or do they accept responsibility? If the resurrection was meant to wake people up, then maybe it is happening again right now. Not through miracles, but through forgotten words finally being heard. Stay with us, because this story is far from over. And what comes next may challenge more than just history.